A little bit of history. I started out as a guitar player in the 1970s and the 1980s, and then I worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers for a bunch of years, and then moved on to American Express and had a whole bunch of wonderful Fortune 500 experiences. About 4 years ago, I started my retirement, and I do work with the Life Skills Program, my very favorite nonprofit, but also the T. Thomas Fortune Foundation, Fulfills VITA program, and also Literacy Volunteers of America. So I've been asked 5 questions frequently in the last couple of weeks. I want to read these questions to you. The first one is there a priority to follow when we can't find a way to pay all of our bills due to the pandemic? What should I do if I can't pay a current or an upcoming bill? What will happen if I'm late on my rent or my mortgage? Can they evict or foreclose on me during the pandemic? And how does not paying a bill affect my credit? Those are the 5 most frequent questions that I've heard. So I'm going to address those in the next 45 minutes.
9 out of 10 Americans say the pandemic is causing them some financial stress. Half reporting they're worried about paying bills. That's why we're here. 38 million people so far. I didn't see the statistics this morning. 38 million people have filed for unemployment in the country. 145 million people are slated to get a stimulus payment. Of those 38 million that applied for unemployment insurance, 44% of them were initially denied. 44%, and I'll talk about why in a couple of slides. So there's something I think we should all consider, which is how successful we have been in tapping into government resources, including making sure we get the stimulus payment, filing for unemployment, making sure we get approved, and also nonprofit grant programs. As Eleanor said, the chat feature is on. And so please, if you've got a question, feed it to us, and one of the 2 of us will address it. I will leave a couple of minutes at the end for any questions, if you have any afterwards. So, the CARES Act was enacted March 27th, 2020. One thing that's important to know is that the payment that the 145 million Americans get will not be taxable for your 2020 tax return, which you'll file by hopefully April 15th, 2021. It will be considered as a credit to your taxes. So who will qualify? Individuals who filed a tax return in 2019, and if you haven't done that because the filing due date was extended, so you don't have to file yet, but if you filed a 2018 tax return, the IRS knows who you are and will, if all other criteria are met, will send you a payment. For those who get federal Social Security Administration disability checks, same thing. You should be getting the stimulus payment if you haven't already gotten it. A suggestion to those who were not required to file a tax return or don't get disability checks, you can go to irs.gov. On the first page, you're going to see 8 boxes. And one of them is do your taxes for free. You can do this using your phone. And that would be a way for them to know where you are, because you can then say, deposit my funds here. Or you can give your physical address. I'll talk about the differences of those in a second. A couple of rules to get the stimulus package. You must have a Social Security number. An ITIN, an individual taxpayer identification number, will not work to get a stimulus check. It will work to file your tax return. And contrary to popular belief, the IRS does not send that over to immigration. So filling out your tax return with an I-10 is not going to have the immigration police at your door. You must be 18 years old, and if you and you won't get a payment if you are 18 and a dependent on somebody else's tax return, which is a possibility, especially if you're a student. If you owe delinquent child support, your payment will go to the custodial parent, not you. One thing you can do, go back to the irs.gov. There's a button that has daily updates on the status of your payment. If you haven't gotten your payment, go up to the site, and every day they update it with who's been sent a paper check or if it's been deposited. And only go once a day because the site is only updated once a day. So how do you get paid? Sorry about that. You get paid through direct deposit if the IRS or disability knows your bank account. Once again, go up to irs.gov or ssa.gov, and you can insert your account and routing number, and then the money will be deposited into your account weeks earlier than if you're waiting for a paper check. Timing, many people have already gotten their stimulus payment. The way it was planned is everybody who is making less than $10,000 should have gotten it the first week of April. And then it went to $20,000 and $30,000. And they strung it out so the people who were making the most amount of money were going to wait until September 4th. How much should you get? Well, it's $1,200, but there's a rule. There's a restriction. There's a limit to how much money you could have earned. And what the IRS is doing is using your adjusted gross income. And if you made less than $75,000, you get the full $1,200 stimulus payment. If you make more than $75,000, and by the way, your adjusted gross income can be found on line 8B of your 2019 tax return, or line 7 on your 2018 tax return, because they changed forms in the last year. So if you're head of household, that $75,000 number goes up to 136. If you're married, that $75,000 doubles to $150,000. But let's take an average person who's making $32,000. They're going to get all $1,200. If you're lucky enough and you're making $76,000, they will take $50. They'll drop $50,000 from the $1,200 for every $1,000 you make above 75. If you do the math, at 99,000, the 1,200 drops to 0. So that's the math. Any questions about the stimulus payment? Oh, one more thing I want to say. Not only do you get the $1,200, but if you have a dependent child filed on your tax return, you get an extra $500 if they're 17 years or younger, under the age of 17. Okay, if you're single, head of household, which means you've got dependents living and you're sharing, but the dependent lives with you for more than 6 months, but you're still filing singly as head of household, that limit goes to $136,000 for one person.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Unemployment insurance. If anybody has not yet filed, first thing you should do, go up to YouTube. Type in unemployment insurance. There's an excellent 7.5-minute video that discusses how to answer the questions you're going to be asked to answer when you go to apply for the first time. I have worked with 3 people to help them file. One person, not on my suggestion, actually could not get in. This was maybe 6 weeks ago. Was using their phone to do it. They don't have a laptop. And they dialed the number to unemployment insurance 2,500 times a day until they got in. They didn't get in. It took 4 days. Now, one thing that they did is they actually downloaded an app, like an auto dialer, and it just, all you had to do was press one button. But that is one way to do it. It took almost 10,000 phone calls to get in. But please don't get discouraged. You don't need to do it by phone, and I'll give you a link in the next slide on how to do it by phone, or you can do it online. Most people do it online, and I have seen it where somebody will go in and be answering the questions. There are 10 sets of questions. Each question, depending on how you answer them, can ask a follow-up question or not, or 3 follow-up questions or not, depending on how you answer the question. And I saw this person who went in, got to question 7, and the website went down. Went in again, got up to question 2, the website went down. 15 times later, they finally got through all 10 sets of questions. It took them 2 days. And as I said before, 44% of filers have been denied. That doesn't mean you should stop trying. One of the things that happened in this that's brand new for unemployment filing is you didn't have to have a W-2. Typically, you'd have to have an employee and employer relationship. With the CARES Act, unemployment insurance is approved even if you're a 1099, if you're a gig worker. And that's a major change. However, most of those 44% that got rejected, that's why. Because the unemployment insurance office doesn't know you. Their system is set up to see the employer's contribution to your unemployment insurance, and they feel justified in approving you if all the other things that you answer are correct, and they'll approve you, and off you'll go and start getting your payments. On the other hand, if no employer has paid unemployment insurance, and I'll talk about that in a second, they reject you. Here's the problem. They're understaffed. So they don't have the people to call back the 44% who have been rejected. They're still working through that. And I know somebody who's been working on that now for a month. Now, one thing that's important to do is continue to act as if you have been approved, which means you have to check in every week. There are a couple of questions they're going to ask you every single week. A little background on unemployment insurance. It actually is a federal tax paid for you by your employer. It's very rare that the employee pays the tax. There happen to be 3 states that require the employee to pay a portion of it. And you'll see that on your tax return. There's a little question about federal unemployment insurance. And for the state of, get it, New Jersey, there's an SUI. Now, the total amount that an employee would have to pay per year is $150. So it's not that onerous. If you have a job in New Jersey, you have been paying state unemployment insurance, SUI. It's important to know that the funding is federal, but the administration is state-based. So the website that I'm going to give you in a second, I'm going to show you, is for New Jersey. By the way, Arkansas and Pennsylvania are the other two states, in case you were interested. So, eligibility for unemployment insurance. You must have been furloughed or laid off. That's not to say fired or quit. You will be rejected, and that's one of the questions they ask. You must have earned $200 a week for 20 out of the last 52 weeks. $200 for 20 of the last 52 weeks. And as I said before, self-employed and gig workers were previously ineligible, now they're eligible. How much will you get? Typically, previously to the CARES Act, it was about 50% of the amount you were making, and it lasted for 26 weeks, 6 months. The CARES Act added two really beautiful things. First, it added an additional $600 a week for 4 months. That is slated to end July 31st. And right now, there's no discussion right now on extending that. They're looking at the unemployment. I read an article today about how the government is starting to look at that, and political issue. We'll see how that comes out. But right now, the $600 portion, $600 a week, is slated to end last payment July 31st. What I don't know is if you get rejected, most likely, but I don't know this for sure, you will get the money you were supposed to get when you applied. You'll get a back check. And that could be after July 31st. So I mentioned it's 26 weeks, but CARES Act added an additional 13 weeks. And by the way, there was $2.2 trillion in the stimulus package. That's what paid for the additional 600, the additional 13 weeks, and the $1,200 to the 145 million Americans. There are 5 links on this next slide. The first one is just some general information. This is newjersey.gov. The next one is the link that actually gets you to file your initial application. The next link is to get the phone number. So you can do it over the phone. Updates for the next link. And then the last one is the link to the YouTube. Any questions on unemployment insurance? Any additional questions from anyone? I do want to make one, while you're thinking about them, I want to make one final suggestion, and that is now is a great time, and you mentioned it, Christine, about job training. You know, they're training you about COVID, but if you're thinking about doing something else, now is the time to go and get that training. And one thing you might do is take an hour and do a career aptitude test. There's one called 123 Career Test. There's another one called Career One Stop. Just Google them. They're free. They take 30 minutes to 60 minutes, depending on how fast you read and how much you want to think about the answers. And it basically gives you a sense of what kind of job would be good for you. And then what you do is you put in that job into a monster or a career builder, and it gives you all of the companies that have that kind of role. And that would be a good thing to do during this time. Okay. So a lot of you know that bill pay is one of the things that I address in my financial literacy. And one of the things that I've learned is that some people pay bills based on whoever has called them or written them a letter the most recently. If they got a letter in the mail yesterday and it's on the kitchen table, that's the bill they're going to pay first. If they got a phone call from a vendor or a bank or a creditor, they are going to pay that bill next. And I would like to propose a different approach. By proactively planning to pay bills in advance of their due date. And here's how. You take, and this will take about an hour. You take every single bill that you have, and if you get it through email, then just write a list of all the bills, who they are, how much they are they the same amount every month, or are they different amount every month? But take them all and put them in one place. Include things like groceries, household necessities, cleaning supplies, your rent, your utilities, child support, child care, all of the different taxes that we pay, all of the different insurance you pay, health insurance, car insurance, car payments, commuting payments. If you take the bus, if you take a ferry, you have to put all that into this list of your expenses. Cell phone, other utilities, loans that you've taken, secured loans like a car loan or unsecured loan, a credit card, a secured credit card, those that are current and also those that are past due. Put them all together. Just know that you are halfway through creating your budget, because the only other thing you need to do to finish your budget is to consider all your sources of income. And we can talk about that at another date, but that's a good practice to do. Now, once you have those bills, you then prioritize, and you don't think you have enough money to pay all of them. You have to prioritize which are the ones to pay first. Self-care it goes to the top of the list. Food, shelter, essential utilities, they get paid first. You want to keep the heat on, the electric on, heat in the winter anyway, the electric on, water. Healthcare is next. Legal obligations like child support, like your car insurance, those are next. Health insurance. Then you've got your secured debt, like your car payment. And then at the end, you've got your unsecured debt. I would ask a question. What do most people think about their telephone? Is it essential or is it not? It used to be not essential. But most people today think their phone is essential. So that would go to the top of the right under food and shelter. So you separate the bills in that order, or you order them that way, and you see which ones you can pay. What I haven't said is order them by dollar amount. I don't think that's a good idea. I can pay all these small ones, I can't pay the big ones. Sometimes it's more important to pay the one big one and not all the small ones. For those service providers, what do I mean by service provider? Every creditor, everyone who bills you, everyone who provides some sort of service to you, be they a bank, a utility, your landlord, they're all, I consider them all service providers for this discussion. For those that are not essential, that you don't think you can pay, if you take nothing from this talk, call them. Have a strategy and just call all the people that you think you might not be able to pay next month. A lot of these companies have programs already set up. Some of them have actually come out and may have come and contacted you. I know I've been contacted. Consider speaking to a credit counselor or a financial literacy coach, but please beware of debt settlement companies. And I have a whole other talk about debt settlement companies because they're in business for themselves, not always for you. A word about rent. If you can't make the rent, you talk to the landlord and you tell them you may have difficulty paying next month's rent. Explain the situation in detail, including whether you think you'll be late or whether you think you could be on time but can't pay at all. The fact that you're reaching out is very important. It puts you in a better position than those renters who are not contacting the landlords. By the way, the CARES Act had special clauses for people in public housing. In fact, there's a 120-day moratorium on starting eviction notices. From March 27th, they can't start it until August 27th. And then there's a 30-day period after that. So you've got some time to hopefully the economy will come back and you'll be able to get more work and start paying. So if you've spoken to your landlord, and you might consider something like this: I can't pay next month, but what I will do is pay you $100 extra as soon as I start getting paid each month to make up the month that I couldn't pay. Mortgages, it's a whole other story. I'm not sure that anybody on the call has a mortgage to worry about. If anybody does, raise your hand either on chat and I will talk about it. Otherwise, I'll skip it. Utilities, gas, water, sewage, electric. Every one of these companies has a program, so contact your utility provider. Also, there is an organization called LIHEAP, which stands for Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program. They are out to help people in need with their energy bills. The one caveat is they're grant funded. So they may have already exceeded their amount for this year, but it's certainly worth trying. Talk a minute about insurance. Prioritization again. Health insurance at the top of the heap. Car insurance. Now, if you've got healthcare, if you've got insurance from the marketplace and you've lost your job, you got to go back because you can reapply. That's one of the reasons. If you've gotten change in income, you've lost your job, you've gotten divorced, you're recently disabled, all of those will allow you and you don't have insurance elsewhere and you don't qualify elsewhere, your spouse doesn't have it through their job, you go back and the cost can be adjusted. Food and housing and household necessities, common things for shopping, limit shopping trips. That's been easy, hasn't it? We go shopping less these days. When we do, buy store brand, buy in season, buy late season when they're discounted. Is anybody growing their own? That's something that people can do if you've got the property to do it. Make sure you're using your freezer correctly and maximizing it. The SNAP program is still funded. There is a limit of $15,000 a year gross income. There are a couple of new apps you might consider when you go shopping. One is called Fetch, another is Ibotta, and those are reward programs and discount food. So you go and scan all the items, you scan your barcode, and all the items that qualify get you a discount or get you rewards for your next shopping. So you may want to do that. If you've got a car payment and you don't think you can make it, call the lender, the creditor. They do loan modifications. There's a couple ways that they do them, but one thing they can do is change the interest rate and lower the payment. The other thing, for a period of time, they could allow you not to pay for a period of months and basically tack on the payments to the length of the lease. So if you had a 4-year lease and you stopped it for 3 months, you really have a 4-year, 3-month lease. A word about unsecured debt. If you've got a secured credit card and you're using it and you've maxed it, if you've got an unsecured credit card and you're using it or you've maxed it, use it as best you can. If you've got to, if you feel like you can't pay it, call the creditor. If you're on a payment plan for a debt that's gone into collections, call the service provider for that payment plan and tell them to delay your payments. You have to put the payments on hold. That should be the last payment that you pay. Now, will that affect your credit? They say no, but I'm not sure I'm buying it. We'll see if they, if the creditors have the way to mark your payment, not making your payment and not sending it, because their system is set up to send that piece of data to the credit bureaus. And it's the credit bureaus that create your credit score. So we'll see if those creditors have that ability. They say they do. I'm suspect at this point. If anybody has student loans, if they're federal student loans, you, Millie, I'll answer your question in a second. If you have a federal student loan and your income has gone down, they are very flexible in changing how much you have to pay or whether you can postpone it. One thing to ask about that is, will interest continue to be, will it be deferred, or will interest continue to accrue so that when you go back to paying, the total amount has gone up? Something you can ask the question. Now, these are federal subsidized loans. When they are private loans, you're at the mercy of the lender, and that's different. And they don't have to, but some of them will, because they'd much rather keep you happy during this time, get the good publicity, and then when the economy comes back and you're working again, you go back into paying. So an unsecured credit card is basically any credit card, Amex, Discover, Visa, they're all unsecured cards or unsecured credit. Think about secured credit as a car loan or a house, a mortgage. They're secured by an asset. Unsecured is credit cards. For those people that have had bad credit and are building up their credit, a very useful tool is called a secured credit card, where you give the creditor about $500 into a savings account, and you start using that credit card for a period of about 6 months. The bank sees that you can pay it back, the amount that you've borrowed. And by the way, I suggest you only use about 25%. So start borrowing about $125. So what's that? A tank of gas, a couple of cups of coffee, and one dinner every month. And then pay it back. And do that for 6 months. What will happen is your credit score will start to rise. in a very, very positive way. And then after 6 months, you've got a couple of options, changing that secured card to an unsecured card or increasing the amount you can borrow without having to put more than $500. One final thing to think about with when money is tight, subscription services, you might need to cancel them. I hate to think about it, but Netflix being one of them. And if you get a paid subscription, it might be time to put it on hold at this point. When you start spending, ask yourselves these 7 questions. Can I do without it? Can I put off buying it? Is there a less expensive way? Can I find a better price? Can I make it myself? Can I borrow the money? Can I borrow the thing that I wanted to buy? Can I barter for it? These are things, standard shopping tips that I think are a good suggestion. Okay, some final thoughts. I want to let you know that sadly, crisis breeds more scams. And I have learned about 3 scams for the coronavirus already. The first scam I learned about, which was within weeks of the pandemic starting, there were these really thieves who were setting up a fake virus testing facility in mall parking lots that weren't being used anymore because the malls were shut. So you walked in and you said, "Oh, I'm going to get a credit card. I'm going to get a virus test," and they swabbed you, and they said, "We'll get you the answer, soon." And you filled out an application and you gave them your address. You may have given them your social. You could have given them a credit card, and even if they didn't charge you. And now they've got your information. So that was scam number 1. Scam number 2 is investment opportunities. Companies saying, we represent a company that is this close to a vaccine, and the stock price is going to go through the roof. Invest now. And the third scam is fake CDC emails, where they just give you information and they say, click here, and you've clicked there, and they're now getting access to your computer. So, some future topics. I know number 6 has become number 1. I'm very happy to hear. So Zoom, because I certainly need help with it. Job searching, resume writing, interviewing, financial literacy, and coping with change. One of my favorite topics. So those are the future topics. Anyway, there are 3 things I wanted to mention. There are 3 sites, and these sites, I'll have links in the notes that Eleanor is going to send everyone. One of them is called benefits.gov. They've got about 83 different little links on benefits that you might be able to benefit from. They're community action agencies, and the last one is called 211, which it's funded by United Way, and you can either call 211 on your phone or go to 211.org, and they've got lots of different help. You can go there. So those are the 3 things that I wanted to end with. Thank you very much for listening.